me that like you can see my screen?
Yes, Patru.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And even the font is also visible to you guys, right? Or do you want me to increase the font size?
No, it's visible.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks. So, first let us understand, before we are getting into the UiPath test suite and its components, right? So first let us understand how the test suite evolution came. So of UiPath test suite. So UiPath is having a lot of products as part of its ecosystem, like, right? Uh, the base part is like it actually came as an RPA software, like where we will be automating the business processes, robotic, which we call it as a robotic process automation, which actually a replication of the traditional automation. So similar to the testing, what we actually do, automation testing, similar to that, like instead of testing, this product came as like overall implementation of our process automation where we do in the production. So a small difference I can say, automation testing versus RPA, the robotic process automation, right? So instead of robotic process automation, let me call it out as only automation. So what actually the difference between these two? So in case if you are doing an automation to test an application in the QA environment, right? QA environment, and you are trying to test the functionality is automation testing. Whereas if you are trying to implement the functionality or the entire end-to-end process in the production environment, then that is called process automation. Of course, there will be a lot of differences between these two, like end-to-end process, and in terms of the testing, we will be only testing specific functionality, whereas in the process automation, you will be combining all the functionalities. But at a broader level, at a very high level, very simple definition between the automation testing and the process automation difference at a very high level and the broader level is the environments. If you are doing in the non-production environment, then we call it as a testing. And if we are doing the automation in the production environment, we call it as a process automation. So this is at a very high level. Of course, there are some more differences, but this is at a very high level. And UiPath initially came as an RPA software where it contains an IDE, which is UiPath Studio, and an agent, which is UiPath Robot, and a control room, which is orchestrator. So if we go back to in, 2016 or 17, like we used to have only these three components as part of UiPath platform, which is like ID to develop our workflows as part of our automations, and the robot is to execute the automations, and the orchestrator is to manage the automations and the robots. So this is the product platform initially when the UiPath was initiated, and later it evolved into multiple products, such as they brought in the AI Center, which is to integrate our UiPath integrate the AI into our UiPath automations, and then they brought in multiple products, right? Like now, if we talk about the products of UiPath, we have Studio Web and we have Action Center, which will help in terms of like having a human to validate the automations are correct or not, the decision in case if the human decision is required in between, and after that, like data services, which is nothing but our database kind of thing. And here we will not be covering AI Center, Studio Web, and Action Center, but we are going to cover a data service as well as part of our curriculum or as part of our series, our sessions, because in terms of the data-driven testing, we will be leveraging these data services as well. And it introduced communications mining, where the human can interact, like the robots can interact with the unstructured data or email communications or messages, and the process mining for process streamlining. So even the UiPath test suite as. So like there are much more products like which is task capture, which we will be using as part of our sessions, and task mining, which is to understand the process, like how what are the different steps are there in the process. So our area of interest as part of this session will be the test suite, task capture, and the data services. And we will not be covering all the other products because which are not as part of our testing automation. And now, if you see the AI Center, Studio Web, Action Center, or comms mining, or process mining, or a data service, or a task mining, right? These are nowhere related to our testing suite. And these are not directly dependable on these particular core products of UiPath, especially in terms of the studio, right? These are completely a different topic where we will be getting infusion into our automations, like with the help of the AI powered automations. Now, of course, now the UiPath is coming up with the agentic automation as well, the agent builders and everything. But where the test suite is completely dependable on these particular base core UiPath core products. So even like in as part of our process automations in the UiPath Studio, we will be building workflows as part of our process automation. Right? And in the similar way, we will be building test cases in the test automation. So the same product we are going to use even to build our test cases as part of our test automation. So this is dependent on the actual core product of the UiPath and the UiPath robots. This actually used previously to execute or automations, to run automations as part of our process automation, to run test cases as part of our test automation. So the same the UiPath robot we are going to use as part of our UiPath running the test cases as part of our test automation as and UiPath orchestrator. Of course, we will be having a lot of components in the UiPath orchestrator like assets, queues, and everything. But the major or primary motto of having this UiPath orchestrator is to manage automations and robots as part of our process automation. And here it is to manage robots and test cases. So I can write in this way: test cases, test sets, and robots as part of our test automation. And another product UiPath brought in to bring the completeness to the automation testing is UiPath Test Manager, where we will be managing all test artifacts So we will be covering all what are the different artifacts we will be having as part of our test manager in the next session, where we will be going completely in deep dive with the test manager. And this is for more of managing the test artifacts and validating test executions. So this is something got additionally added. And And here, in terms of the UiPath Studio, in terms of UiPath Studio, Robot, and Orchestrator, if we see that there is no additional thing which is built on top of the UiPath Robot. It is same as it is like previously what we have, and the same robot agent will help us in terms of executing the test cases as well. There is nothing much in terms of that, but in terms of the UiPath Studio and the UiPath Orchestrator, there is some one more layer which is built to serve for the test automation as well, along with the process automation. And in terms of the UiPath Studio, first let us come to the development. What actually built on top of the UiPath Studio is UiPath testing activities, an option to create test cases along with workflows, and dedicated testing panel. See, in UiPath, we will be having a lot of panels, which we are going to go and see in terms of UiPath Studio. And UiPath introduced the testing panel to serve for the test automation. So these three are the additional capabilities which are got added as part of the UiPath Studio existing product to serve for the test automation. And addition of these three actually giving the enhancing the UiPath Studio for the test automation from the process automation perspective as well. Without these three, can't we create the testing for the UiPath from the UiPath? Yes, we can do. But for that, we need to build our own customizations on top of each and every workflow. And even to execute that, we need to execute it manually. It cannot be helpful in terms of like automatically executing of the test cases. Right. So these are the additional capabilities which are given to the UiPath Studio for building UiPath test automations. And in terms of UiPath Orchestrator, in terms of UiPath Orchestrator, what actually we have? There is a dedicated testing tab added where we will be having the test cases, test sets, test schedules. So these additional capabilities were added as part of the UiPath Orchestrator, which will enhance the product to the test automation as well, right? And this is of like new features which are got added to the existing UiPath core platform to enhance it for the test automation. Okay, and maybe if some keywords or like when I'm talking some concepts, you might not be getting familiar with that as of now. If you're coming from the UiPath background, so some things in the testing you may not be understandable. And if you're coming from the testing background, UiPath core architecture is not known to you, so it might be something new for you. But gradually, when we are going into that, we are going to cover each and every concept or aspect of this in the further sessions. So there you will be getting to know. And we need to look into the architecture of the UiPath test automation platform, test suite. But before that, let us have a glimpse on what actually the testing and how the testing works. Like this will help for the people who is coming from the UiPath background, right? Like process automation background. So what actually the meaning of testing? Can anyone who is not from the testing can help me out? What actually do you mean by testing?
Checking for the happy path and
To
the
check the
possibilities of
functions of
failing
the
scenarios.
Okay. Okay. A very simple statement for the testing is whether the product or a project is working as expected or not. As expected in the sense meeting the requirements or not, right? Like there is a requirement to build a web application for some specific use case, and you'll be having a lot of functionalities as part of it. So whether the web application is meeting that requirements for in the aspects of the functionalities in all the scenarios or not. So it's simply you can say expected value versus actual value. So this expected value will come from the document or the requirements, and this actual value will be coming from the execution or like testing of our functionality of the application. So this expected value will come from the document and the actual value will come from the application. If both are matching, then the my application or the product which I have developed is meeting the expectations. So this is at a very high level and a simple statement for the testing. So everyone is aware of the software development life cycle, right? Like we will be having the requirement analysis, and um, then we will be going for the assessment and design phase, development, testing, and everything, right? And in terms of the software testing, what are the different phases we will be having? Or you can say software testing life cycle. So everything should have its own life cycle, right? So here also, the first part will comes with the requirement analysis. So it's not necessary for us to wait till the development of our application is completed to initiate your testing. So it is not at all required for you to wait till the product development is completed or application development is completed to initiate with your testing procedures. So as soon as your requirements are got freezed, as soon as your BRS document is ready, in terms of the process automation, we call it as a process definition document. But in a overall software development terminology, we call it as a business requirement document or a functional requirement document, BRD and FRD. Once these are freezed, then we can initiate our test lifecycle and testing procedures, right? So requirement analysis, as soon as the requirements are freezed and we'll be analyzing the requirements. And after that, we will be going for a test planning. Whereas in the development life cycle, we will be going for the solution design, which is your development planning, right? In the similar way, we'll go for the test planning. And in terms of the test planning, we will be we will be defining our test strategy, and we will be identifying the environments, and we will be seeing like how much time and the cost estimation will happen, as part of our testing, how much timelines and everything we will be defining as part of our test planning, right? And also we will be writing our test cases as well. And test case development. Whatever the planning we made based on our requirements, and we will be finalizing what are the different functionalities we need to test, right? So those test case development we will be initiating after the test planning, which is similar to the development in the software development life cycle. And then test environment setup. Why we are getting that test environment setup after the test development? It should be before that, right? Like we should have the environment beforehand itself, correct? Test case development, we will do it in the dev instance or before the test QA instance, right? and it will be on your system and all. But the test environment setup is like to run your test cases on the application in an scheduled manner or not manually executed manner, right? And also we will be defining the test environment similar to how it will be a replication to the production environment, so that your testing can be done and it can be ready for the production after the testing. And like we will be defining the conditions for the environment, and how the software needs to be tested uh, in terms of your testing of the application. And this can be done along with your test case development as well, because this is not dependent on the previous. Of course, it depends on the test planning, because in the test planning only we will be defining where, what environment, like how the test environment and all these scenarios. But um, it can be done along with the test case development. And after that, we have a test execution. Once your test case development is completed and your test environment is ready, then we will go with the test execution, which we will be running our test cases which we have developed, and we will be validating each and every functionality, whatever is required as part of our requirement documents, whether the application is behaving as expected or not and meeting the requirements or not. And we will be doing all of our test executions. And after that, test closure. And in terms of the test execution, we will be having the defect tracking. So we will come to that what is defect and all these things. So defect is nothing but like if the expected value and the actual value are not same, if the application is not meeting the requirements as per the requirement document. So that we call it as a defect, and then again we will be logging that defect, and we will be analyzing our test execution results, and also we will create a report as well. And in the test closure, we will be having the summary report. Like, let us assume that you are testing 100 scenarios and you have 100 test cases, right? And then you need to summarize your report. And even if you have 100 test cases, your executions is not, it may not be 100, it can be 150 or a 200, because we will be running on a different with a different data as well, right? And different scenarios. And then we will do the environment cleanup. So this is these are the different phases of the software test life cycle. And I'm just taking a pause here. And if you have any questions, we are open for the questions for a while, and then we will go for the next.
Yeah, hi Patradu. Just I
Yeah.
have one question here. Basically, like let us assume like we don't have an the different environment in order to do this type of in the testing. Like let us assume like we have only production environment only. Can we
Mhm.
set up the same type of in the thing in the production also to test
So
these?
I
Yeah.
got your question. So maybe you might be coming from the process automation perspective,
Hmm.
where you might not be having the test environment available
Hmm.
for you,
Yes,
and
correct.
you're
Hmm.
going to test your automations on the productions,
Correct.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But but here we are talking more on the application testing. So when you're
Hmm.
developing the application, obviously you'll be having a test instance of the application to test it before releasing it to the production.
Hmm.
So let us assume that like you're working on, you're doing an automation on a web application.
Hmm.
Okay, you're doing a process automation on a web application for an end-to-end process. So you will be focusing only on a specific functionalities of the application, right?
Hmm.
On
Correct.
but
Hmm.
here you are building the web application. You are having you
Hmm.
will be building a lot of functionalities on top of it, and you'll be having a sandbox for that application. You need
Hmm.
to release it to the QA, and it must be there. Then once everything is tested and everything is approved, and if it is a bug free or defect free, then only that can be moved into the production. So you will always have a test environment for any application development.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Patrul, what are
Yes.
the benefits we are using with the help of test suite UiPath product?
Benefits with UiPath product. Okay, let me ask you a question. In terms of the process automation, right? We have a lot of technologies already available in the market since decades. If you see the Python, you can do the process automation with the Python as well. But the RPA came into the market in a decade back, 10 years back, and then everyone started adopting the RPA, like UiPath or Automation Anywhere, whatever the RPA tool you call it as. The reason why they moved to implement with the UiPath or Automation Anywhere or anything, though you already have the Python to implement process automation is, um, time to move it to the production. So ease of implementation, and we can deploy the automations in less time, right? In the similar way, the advantage of UiPath test suite is UiPath is having a strong integration with almost all the enterprise applications, right? And it is having a very strong UI automation capabilities. And when you compare with the existing test automations, um, Selenium requires a lot of time to implement your test scripts, whereas the UiPath requires very less time comparatively compared with uh, Selenium. And UiPath is already having a plug and play connections with a lot of applications. So for that reason, you can use the UiPath. And of course, there are other automation test tools as well, like UFT and Tosca. You have multiple other tools. Even those are also enterprise. So it can be considered as a competitor for that. But it is kind of like because those are also can be implemented with a very ease and less time. So it's very simple that like it is easy to implement and make it ready for the make it ready for your use very quickly.
Got it, Patrul. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Patur, I just have a question here. Like, so let's say, so I have identified some application for the testing. So, what will be the timelines for creation of the particular? I'm like, how do you estimate the timelines and all? Let's say, is it dependent on test planning, or is like how it goes basically?
Your timelines will be as part of your test planning only. Because
Mm-hmm.
let us take a scenario that like you need to build 100 test cases. Okay, I cannot allocate the timeline for all the 100 test cases equally, because some test cases might be dependable on the previous test cases and that can be reused. We need to consider that as well. And based on the functionality of the testing, like what are the test scripts we are building for a specific functionality, and it depends on the complexity of that as well.
Okay.
Okay. So, so a very silly question I just want to put forward. And if you are not doing the testing in a proper way, what will be the impact? Your testing is not complete, or your testing is not proper.
It will impact on quality and performance.
Correct.
and uh, a defect product into the market.
Okay. Okay. So we are thinking more on terms of the application development side and in terms of the developer mindset. But what we need to understand the importance of the testing is it's not about the defect, or like it's not about the quality or something. It's more we need to think towards the business impact, end user experience. These two will impact a lot. Of course, whatever the points you made are correct, but the huge impact is the end user experience and the business impact. These two will be very critical. That's the reason for which the testing is the most important part when it comes to any of the project or any of the product or even whatnot, like even your Windows OS, right? If your operating system is not working as expected, who will use the Windows? Correct? So it's going to be an impact in terms of your market and the business value, and also in terms of the end user experience. And you said like a bug product, right? So there is a slight difference between the bug and a failure. Bug is something deviating from the requirements and identified in testing. This we call it as a bug. Failure is not working as expected in production. We should never call it as a bug in production. It should be called as a failure, because you already tested it and you moved it to the production, and the production people are using, right? And they are not aware of the technical things, right? It doesn't matter to them. It's simply it is not working and it's a failure. Your product is failure, right? And this is more on the testing side. There is a bug life cycle as well, if we need to discuss, but it is kind of like a I'll just give you a very high level, like which is defect life cycle. By considering our time and all, right? Defect is identified in the testing phase by the tester, and the defect is logged, and status is new. Dev team will analyze the defect. Of course, the testing team has logged it as an testing team logged it as an with the status of new and considered it as a bug, stating that it is a defect. It may or may not be the defect, right? You might be passing on the wrong values and you might be creating it as a defect, though it is working as expected. So there can be happen. Then the DAO team will analyze this and it will confirm whether it is a valid or not. And if it is valid, if it is not valid, the defect will be rejected. Okay. Similar defect is raised previously. You might be having like previously also there might be a similar defect is raised. Then it will be duplicated, saying that like it's already raised and we will be considering that. And whether the defect which is created is in the scope of the application requirement or not. See, there might be some testing we might be doing, which we may go out of the requirement and see how it is working as, right? In case if the defect is out scope of requirement, then it will be considered as deferred, which means like we are not considering that as of. And if the defect is not existing and it is a valid request, then it will be changed to in progress. Valid, then it will be in progress. And this will be considered and it will be considered for the fixing. And once it is considered and moved into the in progress, and the development team will start working on it. And once the defect is fixed, the status will change to the fixed. And then again, the tester will retest this functionality. And if it is working as expected, and it will be closed, working as expected. If not, even then also, if it is not working as expected, it will be reopened and it will follow all the route again. So this is more of very high level on the testing basic concepts, not in deep dive. There will be a lot of things if we go like different levels of testing, types of testing and all. But it is more of very high level, which actually required um, minimum to have these concepts. So this is more of the testing fundamentals. Now we will be jumping towards the UiPath test suite architecture, how it actually works and all. So if anyone have any questions, I'll take a pause for 2 minutes or 3 minutes to get the questions from you guys. And if not, then we will continue with test suite architecture. How we already covered what are the different components as part of the test suite. So now we will cover of how actually these interacts. No questions, guys?
All good, Patrulu.
Yeah, perfect. If everyone is good, then I think we can go into the test suite. So one more point which I missed out is the regression. See, we have a lot of testing, but this word we should be much more familiar with. That's the reason for which I'm talking about this. Regression testing. Okay. What actually this means is regression testing is something that like we will be testing the application. More data variations, right? In unattended, we can do that in attended or unattended, but mostly it will be unattended only. And I'll come back to this regression again, the regression testing again. So once we complete with our test manager architecture, you have a test suite architecture. Okay. So there are some products which will be, there are two more concepts which we need to be aware as part of our testing, other than the components of UiPath. Okay. One is ALM tools. ALM tools is nothing but application life cycle management and CI/CD. CI/CD is continuous and continuous. What is the second D?
Development.
Development.
Deployment.
Deployment, sorry.
Deployment. So these two are a few more things which we are supposed to have. So application lifecycle management is nothing but like how we can track the requirements. Let us assume that you're building a web application. You will be having a login functionality and navigation functionalities or some other tasks to be completed as part of that application. There will be a lot of functionalities, right? And this application lifecycle management tool actually will be help you in terms of tracking the requirements and also logging the defects against the requirements and having the tying the test results with the requirements. So this actually will help you to track how your progress of your your application development is happening or your project development is happening. And one of the best example we can say is Jira. Jira will fall under the ALM tools. Of course, you'll be having Azure DevOps. There are a lot, but these are some of the best examples. And the CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment, is how this actually works is you're developing a web application. Let us consider that like you're developing a web application. And you have 5 members of the team who is working on this particular application. Okay. So what actually we will do in order to have a same code base across all the 5 people? We will be using the version control, right? Such as Git or Azure DevOps or Bitbucket, whatever it might be, right? So we will be managing our code through the version control. And what developers will do is they will commit every day and create the pull request. And then they will merge the code. Then everyone can pull and the updated code to their machines. And once any functionality is completed, and if you want to have a release of the product, then we will be merging this code to the main branch. Everyone will have their own branches, commit to individual branches, and merge code to development branch. Okay, merge code to the main branch. As soon as the merge to main branch happen, this CI/CD will help to execute test sets. So this is how the CI/CD will work as part of our testing. And CI/CD in terms of the production is different, and in terms of the testing, this is how the test cases will be triggered with the CI/CD. Now let us understand how this ALM tool, CI/CD, and everything works, or like our test suite architecture will work. So first, let us talk about the core functionalities. Okay. There are 2 concepts as part of our test management. One is test manager, which is a web application where you can see from your browser or access from your browser. And there is one more thing, test manager hub, which is nothing but the server which is behind the test manager. Okay. And then we have the studio, which is our IDE to build our test cases. And then orchestrator, manage any assets or robots and your test cases. And testing robots. Testing robots or unattended robots, we will come across multiple names in this, but there is no difference in terms of actual uses. It is simply the type of license. It's more of related to the cost. Okay. And these are the products of UiPath as part of our test suite. And the other add-ons, what we need to have to understand the overall architecture or holistic picture of the test suite is ALM tools and CI/CD. And now let us see how these are connected to each other. Our test manager will be connected to test manager hub because your web application should be connected to your web server. And now test manager is connected to studio. Test manager is connected to, I'll show you the diagram as well, the architectural diagram also. Orchestrator. And the orchestrator is connected to studio. Orchestrator connected to robot. If you see here, studio is connected to both test manager and the orchestrator as well. And the test manager is connected to both studio and the orchestrator as well. But the robot is connected to only orchestrator. Okay. And in terms of CI/CD tools, we will be operating on top of orchestrator. And now going further, this will be deprecated and we will be getting the CI/CD on top of the test manager itself. So we can say even now also we can do on from the test manager. But for the test manager, as of now, we need to write our custom code for the CI/CD, but orchestrator, we have directly plugins available. And ALM tools is connected to test manager hub. So this is how each of the core products of the test suite will be connected to each other. And now let me bring out the architectural diagram so that like it will be easy to understand and picturize. So here is the uh, visual diagram, like how each of the product is connected. So the ALM tools will be connected to the test manager, and it will be a kind of a bi-directional synchronization can happen in terms of the requirements from the ALM tool will flow to test manager. And if any defect needs to be created, it will flow back to the ALM. And the test manager is just a web application, an interface on top of the test manager hub. So it will be a bi-directional. Whatever the actions we are performing on top of the test manager will reflect back in the test manager hub. And if some update happened in the test manager, that we can see from the test manager. And this test manager hub is connected to the studio and it is connected to the orchestrator as well. from the test manager, nothing we can do directly to the studio, but from the studio, we can link the project to the test manager. Um, and from the studio, the things can fall to the test manager, but not from the test manager to studio. So test manager will not have any control over the studio, and the test manager is connected to the orchestrator. And whatever executions are happening in the orchestrator from the orchestrator, those will be reflected back to the test manager. Nothing we can do from the test manager to orchestrator, flowing back to the orchestrator. But when you try to execute some test sets or test cases, that actually will go to the orchestrator, and from there the trigger will happen. The reason is the robot is connected to only orchestrator, not to the test manager. So whatever the action we want to perform in terms of the execution, the test manager will send that to the orchestrator, and orchestrator will manage the robot to run the test cases. And once the test results are getting, when the test executions are happening, the results will be sent back to the orchestrator. And from the orchestrator, the results will be sent back to the test manager. Even from the studio also, when you execute the test cases, the test results will be sent from the studio to the test manager. Okay, and here the test manager is more kind of to see the results and the test coverages, how many tests are completed, and for that reason it will be more. And even we can select which test cases to be executed, but that should be sent through the orchestrator only, not directly from the test manager to the robots. And the CI/CD will be sent to the orchestrator now. So this is how the architecture of the test suite looks like. And now we are open for the questions for the next 5 to 10 minutes.
So
Anyone have any question? Yeah, problem.
yeah, hi, what to do? So just a question. So uh, is this test automation is relatively uh, designed to be implemented when a new use case started right from the development, or can we do it once the development is completed for the certain process? It's already been the production, and now we, if you want to implement the test suite for that particular project, actually, if you want to keep that, so what, how could be it different from the both the cases actually? So
So
my scenarios, yeah,
I have a
just
question like, is it more kind of web application testing, sorry, not web, application testing perspective or the
it's
RPA testing
RPA
perspective?
related. So my currently my team is actually having a close to 30 plus bots already in production. So they don't have any automated test testing framework already implemented for it. And all they're doing it in a manual way. So they wanted to implement the test suite now. But there are certain dependencies we have it in terms of test data. So I just wanted to make sure, I mean, how can we efficiently implement the test suite for that particular scenarios? I mean, wherein the test data dependency is there, because when we set up the regression suite for that on a daily basis to run it and see to check out the builds. So how can we do that in terms of test data dependencies clear out?
See, when it comes to the RPA testing, right? I never suggest someone to go for the test suite implementation to existing processes. But if it
Mm-hmm.
is really required and if you are facing some more issues, then you can go for it. But I really will never recommend that. The reason is when you want to implement the test suite, right? You want to build a test case around a scenario, right? For that,
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
there are some specific arguments which are required, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, when we are building previously, not having this testing, automation testing in mind, then we will be doing some like a different way of approach in terms of passing on the arguments and all, right?
That's a
But
challenging we have actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is one of the challenge you have. You need to overcome that. And there is one framework in the test automation as well, um, where you will be having a different states for this, like setup, action, and tear down, I guess. So I'll just give you the names again, but there is a framework which we can leverage that so that like you can read the config file from there. Like let us assume that in if you can just consider only the process.yaml, because I'm not sure about the other functionalities. In the process.yaml, we will be passing on the transaction ID, transaction item and the config, right? Of course, the
Yeah.
transaction ID will be our own data, right? But the config is something that like configurations we need to send it out into that
Right.
particular workflow.
Right.
So
Yeah.
for that, what we will do is in the setup stage itself, we will be reading the config file and we are going to get all the assets and we will be getting the config object out of it. And that we can pass it on. So why I'm giving this example is if you take some one functionality inside of your process.yaml, there also you might be passing the config object only, because
Right.
we will not create 10 number of arguments, right? Sometimes
Mm.
we will be just passing on the config. So with this, with the help of this framework, you can implement this uh, scenarios as well, even if the short
Okay.
of the variable arguments and all. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I get your point. So yeah, so as you said, I mean, if a project if your project or process is getting started newly, then probably we can keep in mind that, I mean, uh, we might use the test suite further for our develop in terms of a testing perspective. So we can design our XAMLs accordingly. But here, my case is a completely different one. So the code they've written a kind of a legacy one. They carrying over the past 3 4 years, I believe. So and it's
Okay.
not that organized way. So
Then
uh,
it is very hard to implement.
yeah,
If the
that's what.
code is
So
not properly
that
written,
yeah. So the XAML files and the a proper navigation of the web page is also not been there. They combinedly written code for 2 3 web pages in single XAML file, wherein passing of arguments is not at all possible
so
for
there
two
is
three
no
files.
modularity in that.
Exactly. So they didn't consider the best practices, I can say, as an of while developing the code
Then you
because
can propose in this way.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
please go ahead, please.
I'm just saying that. So I'm
So
just thinking of an alternative way to use that one if it is a possibility to implement the test suite. Otherwise, I need to go for some alternative way of doing it. Maybe I can get some idea by completion of these sessions, so I can give some suggestion on that as well. Yeah,
uh, maybe we can cover it separately, Prabhu, if required, like once we close out the existing
sure,
testing
sure. Yeah,
course. But this we are not going to cover as part of the RPA testing. This is more kind of we are going on an application testing perspective.
okay,
But we can have a discussions and brainstorming sessions on that, like it's not a problem. But this is more of like we'll be covering on in terms of like test suite capabilities and different strategies for the data-driven testing, and more of the project use cases which we are going to do is more on the application testings. But we will consider this RPA testing as well. If we can just come cover it, we will cover it as well.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Thanks.
Any more questions, guys?
So daily basis sessions will start from 9 to 10, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So and it's for like around a month or so, right?
Yes.
So
I
I'm like,
cannot
if
say that like it is 22 days, but it will be around 30 hours and it will be for 30 days. You can see like it will go till 30 days, 30 hours. That is the minimum time what actually I required, because there is a request from one person that like they want to have an experience of mobile automation testing as well. Like at least to showcase, like at least he want to see that like forget about the hands-on. So that also I'm planning to include as part of this, at least one
okay.
session or 1 or 2 sessions on it. So in that case, maybe I may deprecate the database testing, which I kept it as an optional, but we will see like how much we can cover. Yeah.
Did you
Hey, hi,
share any
Patu.
curriculum?
Yes,
Sorry.
Prabhu, I think, yeah, you actually reached out to me separately, personally, right? Like, I think you're not part of that, but I can share that with you.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, Vikrant. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, so do we have the intelligence also now? I mean, in place in the test suite.
Which one?
Intelligence. I mean, like we have the intelligence automation now, right?
We have,
Uh,
we have.
so in the test suite also we have this intelligence or I mean testing and all.
Yes, yes, we have autopilot for test suite, and also
Autopilot
we
for
have a
test.
lot of
Okay.
Gen AI capabilities as part of it.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
we are covering that as well. We are covering that as well.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, see, whatever the things we are talking more, right? Those might not be required going further when you see the test autopilot. But I doesn't want to get into the autopilot directly because that will not help.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So I just shared that as in our group, so you can just have a look for the curriculum. Okay. Okay, guys. I think I feel that we are good for today. But if you still have any questions, feel free to ask me tomorrow or message me in the group so that I'll respond back. And hope to see you tomorrow again. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
So
Yeah,
can
thank
you
you.
just
Thank
give a
you.
contact
Thank
that
you
we
all.
can just use to connect in terms of fee structure and all?
Sorry.
So I was just asking, like, can you just give a contact so that we can just connect in terms of fee structure and all these things?
Yeah, so the message which you are getting, right, like from the number, you can just, I think in the message also I mentioned my number. So you can directly reach
Okay,
out on that number to me.
sure, definitely. I'll try
Yeah.
to. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.